Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. How you doing, Hani?
Hi. Hi, good afternoon or good morning or good evening, wherever you are.
Yeah.
I'm good. How are you, Rami?
I'm doing okay. Hopefully, usually I get it gets better for me as the episode plays along. I get in a
Yeah,
better mood.
yeah,
I want to tell
yeah.
everybody who you are real quick. So, Hani Duake, am I saying it right? Duake.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, Hani was on my podcast. I don't know, a month or two ago, and we had a really nice conversation. We were talking about Israel Palestine. Hani is Palestinian, Jordanian, and works for and has been working for decades for the Doctors Without Borders, going all around the
Mhm.
world, meeting all sorts of people from all sorts of different cultures. Very, very interesting person.
Yeah,
Learned a lot from a lot of cultures. That's one of the ways that you, in my view, become a smart person. By the way, is to learn from a lot of other people from very different backgrounds than your own. Yeah. So
absolutely. Because because when you interact with other people, you learn different ways of not only different food but also different way of thinking, different way of
attitude,
resilience, different way of attitude.
different sense of life.
It's yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it's interesting. It's really interesting because like sometimes we are drawn into our own bubble, and then you realize, oh my gosh, there are different ways of lives, not just the way I was brought up to,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting.
So I think,
Yeah.
and also I learned Hani has a background degree in journalism, right? Is that what you said?
No, well, my first degree was in English literature and linguistics,
Okay.
which has a lot of writing in it. But like, and then I did when I did my master's in humanitarian action, I was specialized in communication, media, and advocacy. So there has been,
And that's
but
under the
media
umbrella
is
of
part of
journalism.
my job, and I do. Yes, and my current job is as a communication manager. So I do a lot of writing, op-eds, and
So I
articles,
misunderstood what
and
the job was. When you said communications, I thought you meant the technology part of the communications,
no.
technology. That's what
Communication
I thought.
as in media.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
In
very
Arabic,
relevant for this
al-i'lam,
episode.
مدير إعلامي.
It's very relevant for this
Yeah,
episode. And I'm not
yeah,
exactly sure how it's relevant, but you will be showing us later. But today we're talking about,
yeah.
and I should have already put this on the screen. Oh shit, I already made a mistake. So today we're talking about journaling and therapy, how to do it. And
Mm,
we neither of us are therapists, to be clear. But
yeah,
Hani does have a background in journalism, the profession, and they are related. We're going to see how they're related. It's going to be cool.
yeah,
So
yeah.
let's go ahead and get
And
started then.
therapy. I mean, I'm expert in receiving therapy,
Oh, yeah, okay.
and I
I've had
know
therapy
why.
before.
That's what we are.
I've had therapy also. I don't know that I'm an expert, but at receiving
Yeah,
therapy, but I've
yeah.
had therapy a couple times. I thought it
But
was very helpful. How
yeah,
about you? What was
yeah.
your experience?
No, the thing is because like, because of the nature of my job, and not just because of the job, but like also um the different challenges in life. Many times I was going through episodes of depression. So I went into therapy, and along the way we can talk why the therapy and what therapy does, because a lot of people think that therapy is like a one-time thing and then boom, you're okay. It's not. It's a process.
Well, that's one
And
conception to have, and there's the worst one, which is if you advise someone, hey, I think you need therapy, and if you're saying it in a nice way, good way, maybe with different words,
yeah,
they a lot of times will still receive it as, "What? I'm not crazy. You're crazy. You need therapy."
absolutely. That's actually what happened to me the first time I took therapy, because it was a friend of mine who told me, he's like, Hani, I think you need therapy. And I looked at him exactly. I said exactly what you said. It's like, what do you mean? I'm not crazy. And it was after I was having some sort of a nervous breakdown after a series of events that happened to my life. And he said, no, I don't mean in that way, but I think you need
Yeah.
not just a friend to listen to you,
Yeah,
but
well,
you
one
need
way
a
he could have said it.
therapist who would work. Yes.
One way he could have
Someone, a
said it, and the way I would
professional
say
who
it
can,
differently, then instead of saying you
yeah,
need therapy, it would be better to say you're a prime candidate, or you would benefit from therapy. That's a better way to say it.
yeah,
Because, like,
probably.
technically,
But
we
he was
don't
like,
need it. We could live our
yeah,
lives without it, but it would be shittier lives than if we had the therapy.
yeah,
And to
yeah.
be clear,
But he
therapists
was like
have therapists.
a close friend, and that's why he was like saying it this way, I guess.
Yeah, you're right. And it's hard to get the right words to try not to offend people. But also, I want to say therapists have their own therapists. If people understood why they would even need that, they would have a better understanding of why a non-therapist would need a therapist. Just because you have the therapy knowledge doesn't mean you wouldn't benefit from somebody giving you therapy.
Absolutely. Really. Yeah, I agree.
So let's go ahead and get started. So what I first say here, what I want to first explain to people is journaling is really the primary thing we should be focused on, and therapy is really the supplement. And journaling, the way I like to say it, I don't know that other people say it this way, but I see it as it's a scientific study of your mind. A study of your mind using scientific approach rather than like mythological approach.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I say it's the primary thing is this is something you got to be doing on your own. We do this in our heads in a sense, but journaling is, writing it down, making a record of it, reviewing it later. The fact that it's written down is easier to remember things. When you try to remember old thoughts, a lot of times you are reinterpreting them and changing them without realizing it. So if you had it written down and then you go read it, you're helping yourself avoid like a placebo effect. If you misremember things, you can have some placebo effect, some confirmation bias. It's a lot easier to critically analyze your thoughts when they were already written down previously and you review it.
Yes.
And then getting a therapist is like hiring a scientist that is expert in the relevant field to help you in your scientific study of your mind. And I guess the reason I'm saying it this way is I fear that some people, they go to a therapist and they see it like the therapist is doing like all the work and the patient is like an object of study for the therapist alone, and the patient isn't really doing anything. And that's not how it is. The patient has to be doing the main part of it.
Absolutely. It's like a lot of people, they think it's like going to a doctor. You think that he's going to do a miracle, but actually it's you who's going to follow the process. The doctor is going to show you the options on how to do things and what medication to take, but it's you who's going to take the medication, to make sure that you take it on time, to make sure that you follow the procedures that the doctor is giving you in order to heal, And it's the same thing with the therapist. A therapist can navigate with you different ways on how to get out of the current situation or the current status where you are, and then you move forward. And but you do the job. He's just there to guide you and to be with you, like to accompany you. But it's you who's gonna go. Yeah.
So this is a good segue. I once looked up what the therapists do, okay? And I remember learning about this thing called CBT. What the hell is it? CBT. Do you know what CBT is? Cognitive behavioral
I've
therapy.
heard of it, but I can't. Cognitive behavior. Yeah.
And when I looked that up, it was very clear. They said this is the Socratic Method plus some tweaks. That's what it looked like to me. So I really think it would help people if they understood the Socratic method, so they could apply it, at least understand the method, so they could see what the therapist is doing for them. So let me just say what it is real quick, the Socratic method. The first time I experienced it, I was in 5th grade in Syria in a school that was for Europeans. It wasn't for Syrians. And our history teacher, what she did was present some historical situation, whatever it was, and then she asked us a question, like, why did this man do this? Why did this leader choose to X? And we would try to answer, and I remember trying to answer like, hey, I have a potential answer. Is that the correct answer? And she wouldn't say yes or no. She's not providing her answer. That wasn't the point. The point was for the students to develop our answers and to practice thinking. And we were discussing with each other. There was no point where the teacher said, you're right or wrong, or this is the answer that the teacher says. There was none of that.
Yeah.
I think similarly, that's what a therapist is doing. If you ask a therapist for advice, hey, what should I do in this scenario? It shouldn't be the therapist, and they don't. As far as I know, the therapists do not do this. They don't say, this is what you should do. They don't have enough information to even make that decision.
No.
They don't even have enough information to make that decision. And here's another way to say it.
It's basically what they do.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's basically what the therapist or the doctor is doing. Is basically he's going to give you tools. He's going to show you tools, but you are going to build the house. You know, supposedly I want to build a house, or I want to, pave a road. What the therapist is doing, he's going to give you the tools, but you do it. You do the house.
He gives you the tools,
according
but
to what you have.
You also have to build those tools. You have to learn the tools.
Yes, you learn the tools, and then you do it yourself. He's just going to give you the tools, and then you learn how to use them. You do the house as you wanted. He's not going to tell you like, oh, do it only 1 floor or 2 floors or whatever. No, it's you. It's up to you. He's just going to give you some tools.
He might tell you stuff like this. 40 floors is too many, because it'll break physics laws that we know,
Probably. But that's how I describe it, the best describe it because, often that sometimes I've been approached by friends and they ask me, do you recommend me going to a therapist? And I say yes. And it's like, yeah, but what does it do? They think, again, like, I guess because they've seen from movies or whatever that you go and lie down and tell your problems, and then the doctor comes up with a solution. And I said, no, it's not like that. It's like, yes, you sit and talk, but he will never give you like, oh, you have to do this. No, not at all. If you're expecting this, then don't go.
Well, one thing, from what I understand, the reason that doesn't work is one of the reasons it doesn't work is there isn't consent there. If the therapist just says, I think you should do X, it doesn't really work unless you agree that you should do X. Like you're convinced that it would work. So the therapist has to do a really big job convincing you to even try the tools.
Absolutely.
And the reason, like, imagine the very extreme scenario of your parent forcing you to go to therapy. Now, if a therapist found out the parent is forcing you to the therapist, a good therapist would say, "Oh my God, that's horrible. That's going to break everything, ruin everything."
Yes.
Yeah. But to be clear, there are bad people who claim to be therapists because there's things like gay therapy. In America, supposedly you can go get therapy to get rid of the gayness.
Yeah.
And apparently in the Arabic countries and the Muslim countries, you can go get therapy to get rid of the atheism in you.
Oh my God.
As if atheism is a disease. Same
It's a
as being gay is
disease.
a disease.
It's a disease. You know,
So
you
you
get
have to
like,
be
it's
concerned.
contagious.
Listen, so when you're going to therapy, you have to make sure you don't have a fraud as a therapist. Just because they're
Yeah,
claiming to be the
yeah,
therapist doesn't
yeah,
mean they're a good one. And even if
yeah.
they're within a network that is maybe that looks reputable as a therapy program, that still doesn't mean anything. Especially if you're in a weird country.
You know,
Go ahead.
no, it's true. And you know what? I always tell anyone who wants to go to a therapist, you know, it's a relationship. And often, you know, I've been to therapists, quite few of them, and some of them they were good, respectful and everything, but I didn't feel connection. You know, it's exactly like going to a barber. Like, let's say you go to a new country, and you ask for where to go for you know, a barber, and some, you know, people give you options, and you go and try, and then you say like, I think I'm gonna stick to that one. I felt comfortable, even though that the others are good. You know, it's nothing, you know, especially with my, you know, I don't have hair, so it's kind of, you know, easy. You know, I can do it anywhere, but I still have a favorite barber who could understand me well. And it's the same thing with therapists, the same thing with dentists. This is, I have this problem. It's like, I have a dentist now for years. I'm fine with it. I don't want to change, you know, no. And it's the same thing with therapists, because you go to sometimes, you know, one therapist and he's good, but you didn't feel connection. It's all right. It's
Well, another way
normal.
to say it
Go and
is,
find another one.
one way I would say it is, you have to feel comfortable asking questions and saying things to your therapist. So if you tried two
Challenge
therapists,
him.
if you tried two
Absolutely.
therapists and one of them you're not feeling comfortable asking questions and saying things, well, that's not going to work well
Yes.
for you. Now, part of the
Yeah.
problem could be
Yeah.
on your end, of course.
And you know what? I feel more comfortable with a therapist or a doctor who would be courageous enough to say, you know what, Hani, I don't know, but let me check it out and I'll get back to you.
And that
I
is a
would
real
rather
scientist.
have that kind of a, yes, I would rather have, like, that's a sign that someone is humble enough to know that he's not got all the answers,
If they're
rather
not doing
than
that, they're not a
some
real scientist
doctors
and they
who
shouldn't
would,
be doing therapy.
yeah, or some other therapists or doctors who would try to bullshit you or silence you. It's like, oh, you're being a smart ass on me. I know better. I'm a doctor, or something like that. And you know, we
And they
have
do
those
that.
a lot in the Middle East, where
That would be a
I'm a
horrible therapist.
doctor, I know more. Yeah,
Horrible. Yeah,
you know,
yeah. That's not a
and
scientist.
yeah, yeah,
Horrible. Horrible.
and that's the key for me. If I can challenge my therapist and he is comfortable with my challenge, that's a good sign of a good therapist. So
I'm going to make
if you
sure I write
guys,
that down
whoever is
somewhere.
listening,
I'm going to write that
so
down. That would
whoever
be
is
really good.
listening now,
If
you
you
know, if
challenge
this is like,
your therapist and
I'm
they
sorry,
react well, I'm writing this down. If you challenge your therapist and they
yeah,
react well, that's a good sign. It means
absolutely,
they're a real
absolutely,
scientist.
yes, yeah. And if they are humble enough to know, you know what, I'm not quite sure about this, but let me check it out and I'll get back to you. That's even a better sign. That means this person is knows his shit. He knows his shit and he's comfortable in knowing more, rather than being a condescending tone, or, you know, this yeah. So where unfortunately a lot of doctors or a lot of therapists in our region in the Middle East, they have this attitude where, oh, I'm a doctor, I know, how dare you question me? And it's like, no, I
There's some of
can,
that with physicians in the US. There's
it's
some of
my
that. I'm sure it's
case
everywhere.
and I need to know.
Okay, so I guess let's move on to journaling, because that's the more important thing.
Yeah.
I'll just say here real quick.
Yes.
This is the first slide from 6 episodes ago, where we started this this mini series on how to de-indoctrinate. And I say here that your thoughts are habits, or the ones that are habits. Of course, you can have a thought that you just had; it's not a habit yet. And the idea is to replace your bad habits with good habits, thought patterns.
Yes.
Another way to think of it is triggers. Each thought, each emotion can trigger another thought or emotion, and this can make a chain reaction. And a lot of people call this overthinking, this process of repeating a bunch of thoughts in chain reaction form as triggers. They call it overthinking. But the point is, you can retrain your mind. You can retrain, you can remove the unwanted triggers and replace them with good triggers you want. And by the way, the concept of trigger doesn't have to be bad. Your trigger could lead you to critical thinking.
Yeah. And we're not saying here that it is easy. It's absolutely, it's not an easy process.
I'm glad you said that.
I know, at least, I'm sorry?
I'm glad you said that. Go ahead.
Yeah, because like I can speak for myself. Changing, to change something in you is one of the hardest things ever. I mean, I've been into hard circumstances or hardships. I don't know, getting the degree, doing thesis, relationships, or work challenges. And for me, the hardest of them all is change within, change things, change patterns,
My type of
way
change
of thinking.
Look, like, I want to separate from physical things. If I have a problem with my back, it's easier to fix that with stretching and exercise and some physical therapist than it is to fix things in my mind. That's what you were trying to say. It's the mind issues are more difficult to deal with.
Yes, absolutely. I totally
and
agree.
I'm glad that you said it's not easy.
To change, no.
Because I wanted to say,
hell no.
A lot of times when I give people advice, they write back, well, it's not so easy. Well, I never said it was easy. And by the way, the easy things in the world are not even worth having. It's the difficult things that are worth having. Staying the same is the easy thing.
Absolutely. It's actually, it's exactly like a friend of mine told me a month ago. I was like not feeling well, and I was like confiding in him and just complaining and moaning about things and he said something which is quite interesting, and it's quite true. He said, you know what? It's from the bad and horrible things in life that we learn. He said, you would never learn from fun. You don't learn anything from fun. You can have fun, but you don't learn anything from it.
Well, I
But
don't think
when you
that's
go
accurate,
through hardships, I'm sorry?
I think you can learn from suffering, but also you can learn from non-suffering. Like when you're learning in physics, there isn't any suffering there.
No, but I'm not saying I'm not saying suffering or non-suffering, but I mean, like, failure, which couldn't be just suffering. It could be just failure. You failed in something, whether you failed in exam,
non-suffering,
you failed
struggling
in a relationship, From failure, whatever types of failure, you learn something. But if as my friend said, you're having, you know someone and you're having fun with them. You go drinking, you go dancing, and it's nice. But you learn about the true value of your friendship is when you are in a bad situation and you need someone to support you. And that's when you learn if that person is a true friend or not. Because if he's not a true friend, he would just walk away because he's like, oh, I'm not going to get into that shit. And and that's when you learn. It's hard, but you learn, okay, I have invested in the wrong person as a friend. So again, what I'm trying to say is that, failure, a lot of the times we learn from our mistakes, as we say.
I mean,
You
that's what the
learn from it
scientific
and you
approach is.
try.
That's what the
Yeah.
scientific approach
I'm
is.
sorry?
All of the scientific theories we have now came from
Yeah.
failing previous ones and then coming up with better ones.
Absolutely. It's like, exactly like physics. They tried again and again and again and again and again until they found the right equation. So it's and also going back to therapy. What I discussed with my therapist is that also in therapy, you try different methods, because sometimes, you and the therapist would work on something, and then the therapist would find out, maybe it's not the right method. Let's try another one. And that's good, because you also try, because what works for you might not work for me in therapy.
Exactly.
And so
We're all coming with all patients that the therapists are getting. We're all coming from different skill set levels, and we have some skills are better than others, and they don't really know what those are yet until you try them. So yeah, it would make sense if they give you a tool that you try and it doesn't work out. It doesn't mean all the other tools won't work out. You try different ones.
Yeah. So going back to what you were saying is that it's not overthinking. It's because you are thinking constantly about something is, I don't know, let's say something is bugging you, something that you don't like about yourself, but it's at the same time, it's part of who you are, part of your personality. So you try to basically, you're trying to get it out of your system, throw it out, and replace it with something else. And that's, my gosh, it's not only that it's not easy, but it's also scary sometimes, because um, it's like the topic of, let's say, as you said, reconstructing Islam, where you've been brought up in a mindset, in an ideology, and then you realize that, oh my gosh, this is not the right one for me. I don't want to say it's wrong, false, or right, or it's up to you to judge. But let's say I would say it's not right for me. That process of detaching yourself from that ideology, from that way of thinking, from that belief, is so effing hard. It's really, really hard. And because you need to also, you're taking it out, and you need to replace it with something else. And that's also another hard process.
And the therapist helps make it easier, but what we're trying to teach people here is how to do it by yourself. And again, I'm not saying don't go get a therapist, because that will make it a lot better. But the way you do it yourself is, well, for one thing, I want to describe what the purpose of journaling is in a few different ways. So I write here, to create harmony within yourself. That's one of the ways to see what journaling is for. You want harmony in yourself. The opposite of harmony is like, conflicts that are causing suffering in you. So like one part of you wants, I'll do an example that came up in one of the helping episodes in this miniseries. And it took a while to get it out of him, but he started with presenting with nihilism, like there's no meaning in the world or whatever. But what came out was this: he had conflict. One part of him wants cosmic justice, and the other part of him doesn't believe in cosmic justice, and that is partly causing his suffering. And then it goes deeper than that. Why he even wants cosmic justice, we didn't get a chance to really talk about it too much in deep, but in my conception, the reason people want cosmic justice is they have ideas in their head that are much deeper than Islam, like punishment is righteous, shame is righteous.
Yes.
So I had an
Yes.
example with somebody on the ExMuslim subreddit. She came in asking, how do I stop hating? She gave this scenario where she goes, I'm an ex-Muslim and I'm closeted. I have Muslims in my life, but the Muslims in my life are good people I love. But sometimes when they say or do hypocritical things, she gets angry and hateful. And she asked, how do I stop this hate? So I asked her, do you believe in punishment and shame? She said, yes, for certain things. I said, so here's what's happening. You think shame is righteous, and you also think that hypocrisy is bad, which I agree with, the second part. And those two coupled together, you hate it when somebody is being hypocritical. It's that simple in my conception.
Yeah.
Now, she didn't reply
Yeah.
after that. But I really think that's what's happening. There's these underlying ideas that's propping up a lot of these conflicts people have. And, again, when you leave your religion, yeah, you do sort of de-indoctrinate on some level. But there's all these underlying ideas that are deeper than Islam. Some of them are actually Islamic. Some of them are far older than Islam. So you could say they're not Islamic in that sense. They're older than Islam. And people don't recognize them. They keep, to broaden out a little bit more. There's most atheists who lived as atheists their whole lives still have these ideas that, punishment is righteous, shame is righteous. So that means things like you're going to do it to yourself sometimes. If you think shame is good to do it to other people, then you will self-shame sometimes also. There's no way to separate them.
Yeah.
So these people are beating themselves up, punishing themselves.
Absolutely. Again, as I said, it's not easy. And even faith is different in meaning, even if when you take, let's say, two Muslims or two Christians who believe in Islam or believe in Christianity, both of them, they believe in a different way. Yes, there are some commonalities, but if you dig deeper, you realize that this person belief is slightly different than the other one, because we're all different. We, as even science
different
says,
flavors of religion.
everybody has a different fingerprints. So that means we are different people, different perceptions, and
we got different Islams.
And so exactly, different Islam. Even within the same family, there could be two brothers and they have two different, perception of the religion. So
and they could easily have gotten different treatment by their parents.
Absolutely. So to detach yourself from that ideology, let's say between Hani and Rami, is completely different. I mean, probably, there are some commonalities, but the path to detach yourself from that faith or that ideology, it's different. And that's why when I talk to ex-Muslims or ex-Christians or ex-Jews, and it's funny how, yes, there are common ground, but it's amazing how different their paths, how different it is, and how, it's like having different journey, I would say.
Yeah, we're all going to have different journeys out of Islam too.
Yeah.
And there are going to be commonalities, like you said. And maybe you could maybe you could list, maybe there's exactly 20 kind of ways to get out of Islam, in the sense that there was 20 different ways that we got in the first place. I was born to it. That's one way. And of course we got different things. Like, for example, I didn't get a lot of descriptions about hell from my parents. And also, when my parents disciplined me, they never said you're going to go to hell. But there's a lot of people that did get a lot of that talking. So they got a different Islam in their heads.
Yes.
And
I know some people who converted to Islam, and then a few years later they realize, because let's face it, there are people who convert to Islam for whatever the reason. I mean, it could be
Usually
materialistic,
spiritual.
like, oh, I want to marry this woman and she's a Muslim and I am not, so I convert. Or some of them, they meet some Muslims who would explain Islam in a very cute and nice way, and then you think, wow, that's perfect, it's nice. And of course, this person would give you only the books that, you know, glorify Islam in a way or another. And I know one in particular. Uh, and then he converted, and I was like telling him, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yeah, you know, this is." And I was like, "Okay, as you wish." And it's funny, years later, I think it was about 4 or 5 years later, I met him, and he was like, I don't know, while we were talking, and he said, like, you know, no, I'm not Muslim anymore. And I was like, oh, really? What happened? And he said, I was reading a lot. And I found out, you know, all the other stuff that a lot of people were trying to hide from me when I converted. And I was like, okay, good for you. You know, you know. So again, there is no shame in trying things.
Well,
I
people
at
do
some
try
point
to
when
shame. People do try to
yeah,
shame you
it's
for it. There's a lot of ex-Muslims,
yes,
atheists who shame people for going from Islam to Christianity, for example.
yeah, yeah, and again, for me, it's a bit weird, but I respect everybody's decision. I find it weird personally as Hani, but who am I to judge? It's up to you. It's your life. It's your, it's your faith. Be my guest. I couldn't
I mean,
care
it's no
less.
different than saying everyone needs to
Um,
be able to do what they think is right.
yes, yes. As long, at the end of the day, as long as it's not affecting me, uh, you could have, I don't know, believe in chakra or whatever, or Buddha, or I don't, it doesn't affect me in one way or another.
Yeah.
But
So this,
so going back, yeah, go ahead.
good. Go ahead.
No, but so going back to journaling, for me, I did journaling a lot of the times,
Hmm.
um, for different reasons, whether for work, because sometimes you an idea comes into your mind and it's like, oh, this is great for work, so you
Yeah, I don't
you
want to
write it
lose it. I don't want
down.
to forget it.
Yeah, exactly. And on the personal level, that sometimes, and often, that's what happened to me, is I'm overwhelmed with what I've seen at work or what I've experienced, especially working in Doctors Without Borders. You hear a lot of sad stories, horrible, deaths, injured people, tortured, you name it. So it gets into you. You're like full, and then sometimes you're just like, so before going into therapy, sometimes there are measures to help yourself by letting it out. By It could be by talking to a friend, but sometimes when you're alone, it's nice to write down what you feel, what is your inner feeling. And not only that, because sometimes I don't know, you could be watching a nice movie that touches you in one way or another, and you feel something. And my advice to people, when you feel something, whatever it is, sadness, happiness, love, whatever, write it down and come back the next day and read it. And it's like, oh, okay, interesting that I felt this way then. The same thing with um, any incident that happens to you. And that's why, um, like, before it used to be on and off, but now I'm becoming more and more consistent on, at the end of the day, before going to bed, on my phone, like notes. I just write what I felt today, what happened today, any specific incident that touch, that stays in my mind or in my heart, and what is it? You sort of let it out, and then later on you can use it for whatever. You could use it if you are a writer. Like for me, I love writing, so I use these ideas and thoughts for my writing, whether I write a short story or some fiction or some articles for work, whatever. So journaling is actually, I would call it the first step to therapy. You're just letting out, because often the therapist, what he's trying to do sometimes is letting you understand your emotions. And in order to understand your emotions, you have to let it out, whether it's anger, love, hate, fear, whatever. It could be anything, disgust or anything. So writing down your thoughts, your feelings, your aspirations, your dreams, your anything, it will help you in
It's the first
understanding
step that the
yourself.
therapist needs you to do so
Absolutely.
they can do the second step.
Mhm.
Think of it like that.
Yes.
That's why we call it journaling is primary and therapy is secondary.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? Like, I remember my first therapist, um, he gave me a homework, which was very interesting. He said, like, go home and I want you to write how you see yourself. And I did that. And then the next week he asked me, he's like, okay, write, your next homework is how do you think people see you? Write it down. And then I wrote it. And then the third week, he said, okay, I want you to choose 5 to 10 people from the people you know, your friends or whatever. Ask them, send them an email and ask them to write one paragraph about you. How do they see you?
And then you get to see if you were right or not.
And it was quite interesting to see the 3 layers of how I, Hani, see myself, and how Hani
Thinks other
think
people see
that
you.
others see me,
Yeah.
and then how the others actually see me. And
Or
then we
how,
do comparison.
I
And
mean,
it's
they could have been
quite,
lying what they said, but yeah, that's a good point. It's 3 different layers. Yes.
it's 3 different layers, and you'll be surprised because you're like, really? My God, am I this? Am I that? And it's quite interesting. And journaling it gives you actually, because when you write, like, let's say I am angry, I'm furious about something that happened to me today. So I write it down, I use an angry language, angry feelings, and then I leave it. And then I come back in 3, 4 days and you
You're
read
less
it and
angry.
you're like, wow, wow. When you read it, when you are not angry and not,
You get different thoughts, you get different
pissed off from
interpretations.
this person or that. Yes, and then you realize, oh my gosh, that's me. And you start to discover things about yourself. So I totally advise people to write whatever, write anything, anytime. And it
So
could really be
I want to
helpful.
describe the other ways that you can see the
Yeah.
purpose of journaling. You're setting and
Hmm.
achieving your goals. Okay, a lot of people, they kind of go on through life um, without making goals, and it's more like they're doing things kind of what other, especially if you're young. Imagine you're, let's say, 18 years old, you just finished high school, you're about to go to college now, but the whole time it was more like everyone else was deciding for you, and your ideas
Yes.
never squeezed in there to decide what to do for yourself. And journaling is trying to reverse that, so that if whatever goals you're trying to achieve, they're your goals that you chose.
Hmm.
Instead of you're doing things because, well, my dad told me if I do this program, then I'll be able to get this degree and then I can get this job. But I don't really care for that
Hmm.
job. It's just what my dad thinks, or and that could happen with anyone. I remember in college, when I was meeting with the person that helps you decide your classes or your which major you're going to pick. And I remember saying, well, I want to become a doctor, a physician. So what degree program should I go into? And because I happened to be speaking to the biology department, he said, biology, of course. You don't have to do that. There's many other ways you could do that. You know? So not only did I have my dad saying various things, and then I had the school administrator, or not the school, the head department of the biology department having his own interests in there. He wants another body in his department. You know, so you have to be wary of all the people telling you what your goals should be. And journaling helps you separate you from them. And
actually, you know what? It's Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the thing you had just said a minute ago. I think the therapist gave you a homework that helps you separate you from them.
Yes.
Or your thoughts about yourself from everybody else's thoughts about you.
Yeah. You know what? There is. It reminds me of something. I once, when was it? A few years ago, I saw an interview for the American director Steven Spielberg, and he said something really interesting and really spot on. He said, in the midst of the chaos of life and, you know, family, friends, lovers, work, all this noise around you, he said, just be with yourself and listen to this tiny, tiny, tiny little voice deep, 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 deep down there. That's who you really are. Once you hear that sound, once you hear that voice, unfortunately, with this chaos of life around us, we often don't hear it. But he said, if you are fortunate enough to concentrate and really listen to that little voice, who's very, you know, that voice, very, very shy, it's deep down buried in there. If you listen to it and you really listen to it, then that's who you really are.
And I want to say,
when I was listening,
I was just going to add, and we'll go back
to
what you're saying. I just want to add, a religion like Islam, it's designed to get you to ignore that little small self you're talking about by saying things like Allah knows best. And I want to say one more small thing. You can make that small self stronger. And you need to make it stronger.
That's what
the point that, you know, fully confident in yourself.
That's exactly what Steven Spielberg said. It's like, once you hear it, then it's your job
to
bring it out of you, to amplify it,
develop
to nourish it and amplify it and develop it.
Really should have been happening from birth, but the way most parenting happens, and I mean even atheists, they parent in a way
everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's not just Islam or Christianity or Judaism. It's all places.
Because let's face it, we are human beings are selfish by nature. We want people to be us. We want our children to be like us. We want our partners to be like us. You know, there is that selfishness element in that, which is understandable. So in a way, we need to actually train ourselves not to be selfish. You know, being selfless is very, very hard, because by nature we want things. We want to love more than to love. You know, we want to take more than to give. You know, and sometimes, you know, life teaches us that actually in order to take, you need to give. and some, you know, and that's why we need to, you know, learn that when we have children, I don't, but when I always say to my friends who have children, is like, give them the space, give them, you know, give them the space to try and fail, you know. And that's the problem, I think, in the problem with parenting in the Middle East, and not just the Middle East, all over the
The
world,
whole
but
world.
in particular the Middle East, is like, we have this notion, we're afraid, I don't want to fail because I don't want my parents to be upset, because they give me that feeling that don't fail, you're not allowed to fail, you're only here to succeed. And the problem is, how am I supposed to succeed if I don't fail? And that's the problem. And it's like, and that's why my advice to people is like, give space. Even now in management, they always say, give space to your employee,
Yeah,
let
don't
them
micromanage
fail.
your
So they,
employees. Yes. Yes.
yes,
They
and
do
let
not
them fail.
micromanage
Like,
your employees.
it
Yes.
was interesting when one of my bosses, he said, Hani, I want you to fail. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, yes, I want you to fail so you learn, because I
That's a
don't want you,
scientist.
because I was telling,
That was a good boss.
yes,
That's a scientist right there.
yes, he was amazing, he was amazing, he was like saying, because his point is, because I was always trying to be conservative in work, like, oh, and he said, why you are not let it go? Just go, do. And I said, I'm afraid of not doing the right thing and failing. And he said, no, I want you to fail. So you know next time that not to do this, I'll try another way. I want you, he said, I want you to fail in order to speed up the process of learning.
Yeah.
And it made sense, and it goes also for parenting. Let
Yeah.
them fail, let
Of
your
course.
children fail. It's okay. It's okay to try a bad choice, having a bad choice, having a bad relationship, having, I don't know, try drugs, try, I don't know, whatever. As long as you're there, you're watching them, but give them the space to fail and to have confidence in you to say, like, you know what, Dad, I tried this and it didn't work. And and at that moment, you should say, it's okay. Let's try something else.
Well,
It's all right.
another element of that is, you know, if your kid trusts you in the sense that, you know, the parent is giving the kid freedom, but uh and doesn't shame the kid, you know, I've been talking about this in the last few episodes, then the kid will confide in you and they might say, hey, I'm thinking of trying this thing, this whatever, trying a drug or whatever it is. And first of all, they
Yes.
wouldn't even have brought it up to the parent if they thought the parent is just going to say, hell no, you better not do that. You're going to be, or if they're just
Yeah.
not even going to talk about
Yeah.
it, if the parent is not going to talk about it
Yeah.
at all, then the kid won't even bring it up. But if the parent is willing to talk
Yeah.
about it and not get in the way, then the kid will bring it up. The parent might know why it's bad, explain, and then the kid might not do it. Where in the reverse way,
Yeah.
you're just a
Yeah.
dictator and you refuse to discuss anything, then they won't tell you and they'll go do it with their friends, and that'll be far more dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know what? It's funny. I have a friend of mine. His son is, I would say, in the late teens. Back then, now he's 20 something. But that story was like when he was, I think, 17 or something. And he used to, I mean, he still does, but back then he looks at me as, you know, the cool friend of Dad, because I'm the only non-married one among the group. So he would like, yeah, because I was traveling here and there. So for him, I don't know why, but for him is that the cool friend of Dad. Anyway, so we had this discussion, and I used to talk to him a lot, the kid, and it's like, and I mentioned drugs in front of him, and he was like a bit astonished that a grown-up man talks about drugs. And he said, have you tried them? And I said, yes, of course. I tried, And he was like, you could see his eyes, and he's like, oh, and I said, and I can see that you tried as well. And he said, he was like, oh, don't say anything to my dad. And I said, no, that's okay. So I was telling him, I said, you know what? There's no harm in trying, but be careful, be careful in what you want, why you want to try it. And I said, and I told him, actually, I tried it when I passed 25, actually. I said, I wasn't your age. I was 25. So you want to make sure that when you try them, and I said, try them with someone that you trust, not just someone that you met. And he was like, you can see his surprise that supposedly someone, white beard, glasses, someone who's very, looks very respectful, I would say, that talks to him in this language, in a language that he could relate. And I think that's the problem with, let's say, me with my dad when I was a kid, is that the language he was talking to me was not the language that I could understand. And I think that's where the generational gap is. Like, we sometimes speak in a language that our children don't understand.
Which means we need to try to understand their language. There's times where my kids will use a word that I don't know, and I can tell they got it off TikTok or something. So I have to ask them, what's this word mean?
Yeah.
And and then I have to understand that word. Okay, let me describe two more ways that we can see journaling. You're shaping your life by your vision rather than by the vision society tries to put on you. Okay? And then one more way to describe it. You're reprogramming your mind, and the reason you're doing it is partly to defend yourself from other people who are trying to program your mind. And I don't mean just in your past, like whatever they did, your parents did to you with respect to Islam, but I also mean any new shit. There's people out there and entities.
I'm sorry, I lost you. I lost you for a second. Can you repeat what you said? I'm sorry, I lost you for a second because of the internet.
I was saying that it's not only that we have to worry about the indoctrination we received when we were young, the programming when we were young, but there's also people trying to program you today as an adult. That's why they throw out propaganda.
Absolutely.
That is to program us. And you can't defend yourself from propaganda without learning how to program yourself.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now I want
you need to protect yourself.
We're already an hour in, and this whole thing is really only an hour. So I want to finish up all the things we have left to do. Maybe there's not much. I want to say the method of journaling real quick. Hani's already said some about it. So this will be mostly just repeating what he said. First, I want to say this will heavily depend on your current knowledge, your current skills. So suppose there's a really advanced person who does journaling. They have a certain set of skills.
Yeah.
Somebody who's brand new to it won't be able to do that, but you could do something that uses your skills.
Yeah.
So one way I would say it is write down every single thought you're having. You have a journaling session, write down every thought. And while you're doing that, try not to spend time analyzing the thoughts as you're doing. Just observe them.
And I like that, when you say try not to judge. And I think this is extremely important. Don't judge yourself, even if you have this dark, mean thought, feeling, whatever, that you think, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be feeling this way, or I shouldn't be thinking this way. Don't judge yourself. But be
the reason
free.
I say try not to. The reason I say try not to is a lot of people are going to do it anyway, and I'm just saying try not to. Now, if you the next bullet point is if you do end up judging and analyzing your thoughts when you didn't want to, that's okay. But you might as well go ahead and write those thoughts down too, since these are the thoughts that you're having trouble avoiding, but you can't. So go ahead and write them.
Absolutely.
And then the next bullet point is review those journal entries. Don't let it be a dead book you never read again. And it doesn't have to be tomorrow or next week, and it doesn't have to be regularly, but definitely go back into your old thoughts and read them.
Yeah. It's like going into the old notes, like, I go back, it's like, oh, what did I, which notes I took for that meeting. So I go back and it's like, oh, interesting. I
Refresh
didn't
your
know
memory.
that.
What I
Yes,
noticed about
absolutely.
myself is a lot of times I did journaling. I was writing fun things. It wasn't even like things that I was struggling with. It was just fun things, philosophical things. And a lot of times what would happen is, let's say, I don't know, a year later, I was searching through my notes and I happened to cross a note, a journal entry, and I read an idea in there. And it was like, oh my God, I forgot that. This idea is amazing and I forgot it. And I kind of, that's horrible, by the way. I was forgetting a part of myself. So journaling and then reviewing your journaling, you're trying to remember the good parts of yourself.
Exactly. And I like what you are saying down there, but like, I don't want to go into it now, but like, it goes in line with what you were saying, that, not to edit yourself, just write.
Yeah. And I'm not saying there isn't a good place to do editing, I see what your point here is. So let me get to that point. Yeah. So while you're reviewing your journal entries, you may have new ideas, and that's another great time to do a journal entry. Okay. Now another part of this is a lot of people already have this thing where they pressure themselves to do things, and if you're doing that during your journaling, that can be a problem. It doesn't work well. It works better if you're not pressuring yourself.
Yes.
That whole idea of, if you're trying not to analyze yourself and then you do anyway, and then let's say you get mad at yourself or whatever, I can't believe I'm doing that. That's you trying to pressure yourself to act a certain way, and it doesn't work well. And of course, it wouldn't work well if the therapist is pressuring you to do things, or if your dad is pressuring you to go to therapy.
The thing is, because I think, Rami, is because we are under constant pressure to be, it goes back into our upbringing, like, good, bad, black, white, good, evil. So there is always this notion of perfection. Like, we have to be, there's this level up there where you, as Rami or as a Hani, you have to reach. And often, actually, all the time, it's impossible. So what happens along the way is that this level of notion of perfection that I need to achieve, the perfect essay, the perfect body, the perfect thought, the perfect music, and there is no such a thing. But by the time you learn that fact, it's already been many, many years. Like in my case, where I learned to, to accept imperfectionists in my life. I'm not the best employee. I don't have the best body. I don't, all of those that have been indoctrinated by our society, family, friends, everybody. And then you realize that no. And journaling helps you, actually. I wish if I started journaling when years and years and years ago, because it helps. It really, really helps.
I wish I started.
It's amazing
really
how. Yes, like whoever is listening, I would say, even teach your kids to do it. Like, I wish if I started it when I was a teenager, I think a lot of things could have changed.
My daughter started so early that later, when she went to look at that old journal entry from the earliest part of her life, there was no date on it. She That's how young she was. She didn't even know she needed to put a date on it. That's very young.
Yeah.
Very young. And yes, she was very
Yeah.
honest in there. She was very honest in there. She was expressing things she hated. And you know, a lot of times we
Yeah.
hide that from ourselves. We hate something, but we want to
Yeah.
hide. We want to hide from ourselves that we hate it because we also see hating
Yeah.
that thing as shameful. So we're hating
Yes.
ourselves for hating
Yes.
that thing,
Yes.
which
Exactly.
is really
Again,
weird.
because
And
we are not supposed to, as if, yeah, because
Right.
unfortunately, hate is considered bad thing. You're not, you're supposed to love, not to hate. So society, family, religion, and everything is always giving you the notion like hate is bad. But when you think about it, it's part of love. If there is love, there is hate. If there is fear, there is acceptance. All of that. These feelings, we should enrich
Look, when
them
people are being
and
abusive to
teach.
you, if somebody's being very abusive to you,
Yes,
and then you hate that abuse, man, I have so much sympathy for that. I don't want someone to feel shamed for hating their when somebody was
absolutely.
abusing them.
And not just to hate the abuse, and not just to hate the abuse itself, to hate the abuser. I am entitled to hate my abuser. I'm entitled. I'm sorry. Don't tell me love thy enemy. No, I'm sorry. You do it. Go ahead. Be my guest. I'm not going to love my enemy. No, I
Well,
am
in
not
my
like,
conception, um, you know, I recognize that people are doing the hating, but there's a better response than hate, which is like, as an example, if we were to say, the worst criminals there are, it's okay to hate them, but then how does that manifest in what we do with them? Do we try to do capital punishment and also give them the worst imaginable torturing? I don't think we should be doing that. And that's a form of love of your enemy.
no, no, no. But actually, come to think of it, like one of the reasons why I don't believe in capital punishment is because no, you're releasing them, you're relieving them. Let them rot in cell. If someone, I don't know, raped somebody, or I don't want to, no, I don't want to kill them. Let them live
You mean you
30,
want them to
40
suffer?
years in prison. Because for me, if I have to choose between living in a cell for 30 years or being hanged, no, kill me. It's at least you're releasing me.
Well, I
But
think
if
what
I
you're saying,
know
if I
that
understand you
for the
correctly,
rest of my life, I'm gonna live, yeah. But if
I think
I'm
what you're
gonna
saying
live for
is
the
you want
rest
them
of
to
my
suffer in
life
prison.
in a cell, well, I want them to pay, to heave the consequence for their action. And I do believe that every action has a reaction, and every action has consequences. And and uh, and I learned from my mistakes. I lost jobs, I lost people for my mistakes, and I am proud of these mistakes. It makes me who I am. But of course, mistakes other than mistakes. I mean, I didn't go and kill someone. But if I did, then I'm sorry, I have to pay the price for that. If
So
if
you're taking a
I
different position
rape
than me,
someone,
and I actually talked about this in the last episode. I'm curious of your opinion on
yeah,
what I said in the last episode, but I don't think we can talk about it now. We got to finish a few more things.
yeah, yeah,
The
go
minor
ahead.
tip that you mentioned earlier was while you're journaling,
Yes,
don't even spend time editing the stuff you're writing.
yeah,
Don't edit the grammar,
yeah.
don't edit the spelling, don't edit punctuation,
No,
but do edit if you think
no,
you won't understand what you wrote later. Edit it
yeah.
enough where you
Or
think you will
my
remember
my
understand what you said. Go ahead.
my advice is write whatever you have in mind, and it's okay. Come back tomorrow or the day after, and then maybe you can do some editing. It's like,
Okay.
I don't think that's what I meant. I meant something else. But do, just with no filter. That's my advice.
Yes.
Write with no filter. Just
Yes.
write, and then come back the next day or the day after and read, and then say, oh, okay, maybe I didn't mean this way. I meant something else or whatever, and then do the editing.
This is a post in the ex-Muslim subreddit. This woman
Yeah.
describes going to a therapist who happens to be a hijabi, and in
Yeah.
here she describes how the therapist was not really doing therapy. You know, the woman, the patient, was describing a problem she's having with her parent or her dad, and the therapist replied with something like, well, you should understand your dad's position, so you should just do what your dad says. I'm sorry, that's not what a therapist does. And then later she was arguing for going to Islam. This is not a real therapist. I don't know how these people are becoming,
No.
I don't know what's happening.
And even though I have a problem with the statement of never ever go to a
I don't agree
hijabi
with her.
therapist,
Yes,
because
but the main point
yes,
I agree with. There's bad therapists is the point.
yes,
Go
but I
ahead.
agree with what she's saying. And as we said earlier, is that use your gut feeling. I think from the first, in my opinion, the first and maximum second session, you can formulate an opinion about your therapist and listen to your gut feeling. Again, to what Steven Spielberg said, listen to that little voice in down there. What this voice is telling
Not
you
ignore your gut
is this
feelings.
is a yes. The gut feeling is often that we ignore that, actually, and it's very, very important where to listen to your gut feeling, what the gut feeling is telling me. Am I in a good place? Am I in a safe hand? Am I so many things? Am I in the right job? Am I, so many things that sometimes we ignore because we don't want to think about it. We don't want to we don't want to, like, let's just move on. But often is the gut feeling is what is telling you,
And to be clear,
because it's
the gut
actually
feeling has
yeah,
knowledge in it, but it's not in explicit form. You can't make a sentence out of it yet. But it's saying something and there's some value in it,
yes,
and you can turn it into words. It takes some
yes,
work. That's part of what the journaling and therapy is for. To expose
yeah,
your gut feelings and convert them into words. One more thing I want to do. There's a mental health program called Faithless
yeah,
Hijabi. And the person who started it's a
okay,
nonprofit, is Zara Kay. She's the one who wrote this post. She says in here that they're looking for some more patients. They've helped 150 people so far. There's 12 therapists. They are constantly trying to get funding so they can do, therapy with no cost for people. But of course, they take therapy. They take patients who pay for themselves, and also they do partial payment scenarios. And let's see what else. I want to show her website and discuss it a little bit.
yeah.
So here it is.
And one other thing that I would like to add when it comes to mental health, because I not only that I went through it, but also from my work, because we have mental health programs in our organization, and I've been working and living with therapy, like psychologists and psychiatrists, and it's amazing how we sometimes belittle the, it's okay, no, it's just a bad day. No, depression is serious, anxiety is serious, it's serious illnesses. These are very, very serious. Traumas are very, very serious. It affects your entire life. And sometimes we tend to think that's unfortunately the case in the Middle East, where we look at mental health as, oh, it's a first world problems. No, it's not. It's everybody's problem all over the world, the rich and the poor. Mental health doesn't know borders, doesn't know social status. A king can have depression as much as a beggar in the street. It has nothing to do with wealth or status. And I think we need more advocacy on that. Is like, there is no shame in seeking therapy or help for mental health issues.
Yeah, it's still a problem in the US too. There's still plenty of people who, let's say teenagers in high school now, and technically the school itself has a mental health program, in the sense that if somebody's having some kind of trauma, they have a way to send you to a therapist. So that's amazing. But nobody there really sees that or understands that. I remember a case. I don't want to give details, but there was a mother that was being very abusive to the child. And when I say child, I mean teenager. And the teenager, there was police involved, and the police said something like, "I recommend you go to therapy." And the teenager replied with, "What? Why? My mother's the crazy one." You're being traumatized by your mother. That's why you need therapy.
Yes.
I was so shocked by that. Anyway, so that's America. It's worse than the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So I just want to read a little bit of this from Zara's website, sort of describing the purpose of therapy in a therapist's words instead of ours. Religious trauma is a reality for many ex-Muslims, a deeply personal yet often unacknowledged experience. And like you were just saying, all kinds of trauma and depression and anxiety, people are downplaying it themselves. So of course they're downplaying it to each other also. Unacknowledged.
Yeah.
It can manifest as fear, guilt, shame, and emotional isolation. And you said depression, and you said anxiety, all these things. You may feel the weight of, what is it? I skipped a sentence here. Leaving scars that impact every aspect of life.
Yeah.
Yes, it can. If you're awake 16 hours, it can affect every one of those hours. And of course, that means you're not going to be productive.
Absolutely.
You're not going to live the life that you want.
No.
If you've questioned or left your faith, you may feel the weight of judgment, rejection, or even the loss of community and belonging. And that's the hardest part, is fearing or losing your entire community, your friends and your family.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for it's the hardest part of leaving, because we are social animals. Human beings are social animals. We live in communities. We need the sense of community. So when you take away religion, which is a very important component of communities in the Middle East, you're detaching yourself from everybody. Now, let's face it, not everybody. I mean, I was lucky enough to have a family who, don't care much about religion. It's like, okay, you want to be a Muslim, fine. You don't want to, it's also fine.
They didn't reject you.
I am the minority, and I am the minority. I know that, but I know from other people, they suffered a lot. They suffered a lot.
At Faithless Hijabi, they understand these challenges. They provide a compassionate, non-judgmental space where you can begin to untangle the complexities of leaving faith. Our therapists are trained in recognizing and addressing religious trauma, helping you rediscover your strength, process your experiences, and build a life on your terms. And I want to clarify, we're traumatized in so many ways other than religious trauma. All of us benefit from therapy aside from the religious trauma issues. I got therapy related to, I was having issues with my girlfriend, and I got therapy. And from that therapy, I learned, man, I was bringing some baggage from my marriage. I was traumatized from my ex-wife. And I developed coping mechanisms around that. And I carried those on into my next girlfriend scenario. And it wasn't going well. I went to a therapist, and I learned something new too. I might as well just say it now. I was getting angry with her, and I was blaming myself. And I spoke to the therapist, and she helped me understand that woman was crossing my barriers, but also my boundaries. Sorry, that's the terminology, boundaries. But also, I wasn't doing very well clearly saying my boundaries. So that's a flaw on my end.
Often.
Yes. I mean, but it's because I was traumatized from my previous life, that marriage I was telling you about. You know, when was it that we were supposed to be trained on how to have a girlfriend or boyfriend? When? Nobody knows how to do that. Nobody's teaching us that. That's what you get from a therapist.
And again, as I said earlier, is like we are destined, or we are trained by parents, societies, like we are not like, we're not supposed to fail. It's like, it's like a friend of mine once told me, he's like, why do you think people are sad when they get a divorce, when they break up? Yes, part of it is because, like, oh my gosh, I love this person, and
I fucked everything up.
That's whatever. Part of it, big part of it, is because deep down we wanted this situation to work, and we failed. We failed. And we ever since we were young, we learn, the society is telling us you're not supposed to fail. You're
not supposed to get divorced.
Supposed to. Yes.
In some religions, it's not even allowed to divorce.
Yes, exactly. So it's all about failing. It's all about, failing. You're supposed to succeed. Yeah.
I mean, one way to look at it. So that girlfriend scenario I had ended, okay? And if I was to ask myself, or for other people who were trying to interpret, does that mean I shouldn't have done it? Well, no. I think it was good. I learned from it. I went to therapy. Now I'll be a better person if I was to do it again with someone else. And it kind of had to be there. The only other alternative is something like never have a girlfriend again, or just kill yourself now. We need to live life, and so we can get better at it too. So continuing on here, healing starts with being heard, understood, and supported. And that's what we're here to offer.
No, it's good. Please send me the website so I can also share it on my social media.
I'll do that. Okay, and if I don't do it, please remind me over email or something.
I will.
So let's say some more here. Religious trauma is real. The guilt, the fear, the emotional scars, they're real, and they can run deep. As ex-Muslims, I got As ex-Muslims, many of us were taught to bear the weight of judgment, shame, and silence, often at the expense of our own well-being. You just take the shit and shut up. That's what we were taught. But healing starts with recognizing that these feelings were never yours to carry alone. You are allowed to let go and move forward.
As we said earlier, it's like, changing yourself, like, it's the hardest thing is when you realize that, oh my gosh, I've been all these years believing in this, not just religion, it could be anything. Oh my gosh, I've been all my life believing this, but now I know it's not for me, or it's not true. But that doesn't mean that just like this, you get rid of it. It takes a while because you need also an alternative, and you need to test new things. And so it's a long process. It's not a one-day thing. It takes a while to change within.
So for the people that are losing their whole community, they are the ones who even more so need therapists. You know, where somebody like you and me, we still had our family we could talk to, although maybe they were not that great. We had friends we could talk to. So in a sense, we're getting little mini therapy sessions, although they're not trained therapists, of course. And still we benefited from therapy. But somebody that doesn't have those friends, lost their whole community, they're going to need therapy even more.
Absolutely. And especially in the Middle East, where, you know, the space is so tight. It's not like, you know, in the in Europe or in the US, you have a bigger space. You have a lot of groups that can accommodate to your way of thinking. Yeah.
Path to healing. Healing is not about forgetting the past, but learning to reclaim your future. This program provides a space where you can rediscover your confidence, rebuild your identity, and create a life that reflects who you truly are. And like you said earlier, to in the words of the what is it, the movie maker guy, there's that small self in you, and you're trying to nourish it.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the other way to think of it is you have this part of you that makes gut feelings. You can think of as your gut feelings as a part of you, a person in you, and you're trying to find out who it truly is. We've been ignoring our gut feelings, that we've been being told to ignore our gut feelings for our whole lives.
It's true. Yeah.
Our therapists help you navigate your emotions, process your experiences, and find the strength to heal and move forward. You know, this reminds me, a big part of why people don't heal is, you know, I remember my mom saying something like this too. She said, you know, there's this painful thought she has. Okay. It was related to her mom. And she would often cry about it anyway. And she said to me, you know, but I don't want to think about this. Why am I still thinking about it? She's just trying to forget. She's not actually doing the work of healing.
Yeah.
Because
you're part of the healing.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, part of the healing, in order to heal, you need to let go. And often we hold in, like when we talked earlier about hate, I'm entitled to hate, but in order to heal from that person or that incident or that place, I need to let go. It's okay, hate, but then let go in order to move forward. Because as long as you are in that position where you keep hating, you keep clinging into that toxic relationship, toxic job, toxic parents, toxic, you need to let go in order to not only heal, but also to go to a better place.
And I'll say,
and often,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Finish up.
And often is that we cling into things in the past. Because we don't know any better, or we are afraid. As I know, because for example, I know a lot of, I don't want to say ex-Muslims, but they are Muslim because as I say, they don't know any better. It's like, I don't know if I'm gonna leave Islam. What am I supposed to replace it with? I'm afraid. I don't want to. I don't know. So they believe in, as they say, the devil you know. You know what I mean? So they are clinging to the past. So they are living this toxic relationship where they know it's not right for them, but they are staying with it because they don't know any better and they don't want to let go. And that's the problem. Whether it's religion, or a relationship or a marriage.
So the example I was giving,
go ahead.
Yeah, the example I was giving of somebody's holding on to something but they also they're trying not to. They're trying to forget it, but they are effectively holding on to it. The reason that's happening is they have a conflict in them that's not resolved. And in order to let it go, you have to resolve it. And in order to resolve it, right now you can't forget it. You have to deal with it. Journaling and therapy.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle, and you need at some point to break it. And that's where the hard part is. You need to break that cycle. But once you break it, then things will go smoother. But you just need to break it. And sometimes we don't know where or when to break this cycle.
Yeah, and a lot of times we're blocking ourselves from gaining that knowledge because what's happening is you're very emotional about the topic in the first place, okay? And because you're emotional, one response you might have is, well, I don't want to think right now. I need to put it out of my mind so I can, you know. But by doing that, you're blocking yourself from seeing further and gaining the knowledge that you need to resolve the issue. And by having a therapist, or even if it's just a friend, they're not emotional about that issue. So they're more clearly thinking in that moment. That's why you can use a therapist, or like I said, a friend. They're not emotional about your issue.
No, it's true.
So
that's absolutely true.
That's all I had for our like little mini lecture.
Yeah.
I just want to say a few more things to everyone.
Oh, that was very, very deep in a way, and yet it's very true that everybody, I think, whether you are a Muslim or not, or religious or not, or we all go through these elements in life, doubts, fears. We go through that almost on a daily basis, where we think about things in life, ideas, feelings, situations. So
I
it's
believe
very,
everyone on
very.
earth today needs therapy. And I believe
Oh,
in the
yeah.
very far future, everyone will be or will have therapy level knowledge.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. No,
So
it's
we gotta end this soon. I got a few more things to say. Like, subscribe, and share, please, so more people can see this.
Yes.
You can suggest topics or call in. There's links in the description. We also have a Discord if anyone wants to go there. If you lost your community, here's a community you can have. It's not too great. There's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
Also, if you want help from me directly, you could go to the Discord.
Yeah.
Next week on Deconstructing Islam, I guess Hani and I decided what we're going to do next week. It'll be me, Usama, and Hani talking about spirituality.
Yeah.
I'll just say one word: spirituality. We'll leave it at that.
Yes.
And I guess that's
looking
it.
forward to it. That would be looking forward to it, because I think it's gonna, touch upon so many things, not just religion, because in my opinion, spirituality is more than just a religion.
I think it's going to be a lot, and I'm guessing it's not going to be one episode. And during the first episode, we're going to realize, oh shit, we need to have a second episode, and then after the second one, oh shit, we need a third episode. Maybe it ends up being 5 or 7 parts. Hopefully, you'll be there for every one of them.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. Let's see how the people react to it. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I don't care too much about people's reactions. I care more about what ideas we have to say, and at the end of one episode, we'll know if we've got more to say or not. So it's really that simple.
Yes. Yeah.
So like this mini series I just finished, how to de-indoctrinate. I think it's finished. I don't have any more to say. Of course, there's lots of connected topics. The spirituality topic is connected.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, part of why they go from Islam and then become ex-Muslims and then jump right into Christianity, a lot of times it's related to spirituality issues.
Yeah. No, it's true.
And like that
It's
friend you
true.
mentioned who converted to Christianity, I was gonna say he got in by spirituality. There was something spiritual he was hearing from the people that told him that aspect of Islam. You know, Islam is not trying to get you with one method. It's got 20 methods. And it doesn't need all 20 of them. It only needs one. But it throws 20 at you because one of them might stick.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true.
So that's it, everyone. Hani, do you have anything else left to say to everyone before we go?
No, thank you, Rami. It's as always, it's a pleasure being on your show, and really looking forward for next week and for next time.
And I'll probably email you with thoughts on what we might talk about and stuff like that. Okay. And I'll see you next week.
Sure.
See you next week, everyone.
Sure.
And, Hani, stay on for a second.
All right. Okay? See you.
All right. Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye.